In this video, I'm going to demonstrate process costing using the FIFO method, and I'm covering exercise 839 and 840. And the same as my separate video on weighted average, I'm going to demonstrate this in an Excel spreadsheet. Hopefully it makes it a little bit easier to follow along with my various calculations. Now in the other video, I went through step by step beginning inventory quantities and dollar amounts, quantities that I added in. And for the sake, if you're watching both videos, I don't want to waste your time on that. If you didn't watch the prior video, just go back and cover the first minute or two and then jump back into this one. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into step one, again, assuming you've already had that orientation. And first I want to look at how I count for the units, the physical units that I need to account for. That includes my units in beginning inventory of 48,000 and also the additional units that I started of 84,000. So the total number of physical units that I need to account for between beginning inventory and what I started is 132,000. Now here's where things diverge. So I want to translate that into how I account for those units. How many were transferred out versus how many are in ending inventory. Now for weighted average, we didn't make a distinction between what was in beginning inventory and what we did during the period, but with FIFO, we layer and make that distinction. So for 102,000 units transferred out, we need to separate out how many of those came from beginning inventory and how many of those came from additional units that were started during that period. Now our assumption is, since we had 48,000 units beginning inventory and that's less than the 102,000 transferred out, our starting point is our beginning inventory. That's FIFO, first in, first out. That's what we're going to start with. So I'm just going to list the beginning inventory here. And then I'm going to back into how many units were transferred out that were started this period. So if I take my 102,000 total transferred out and subtract from that the 48,000 units in beginning inventory, I get that of that 102,000 units transferred out, 54,000 of them must have been started during that period. Now, I'll get into equivalent units in a second. I just want to get the physical units accounted for first. My physical units in ending work in process inventory isn't any different than the weighted average method. It's 30,000 units. Here's also where things diverge when we get to equivalent units. For my beginning inventory, now you might have thought, oh, I just slide this over. The only thing under weighted average that I had to do with equivalent units is ending work in process inventory. But again, it gets more tricky here. What I need to look at is I'm trying to isolate what work did I have to do on these during the current period to finish these off. So I'm going to take the 48,000 units and instead of multiplying it times the percentage of completion and beginning inventory, I'm going to multiply it times 100% minus that 30%. In essence, what I'm saying is 30% is a prior period. I'm not concerned about that. I want to look at the additional amount of work that I had to do to complete these units. Again, I'm taking 100% or 1 minus 30%, which is also 0.3. Ultimately, I'm multiplying it times 70% or 0.7 because I'm saying that's what was needed in order to finish these off to transform it to equivalent units. So again, 48,000 times 70% is 33,600 of direct materials equivalent units. My 54,000 units that were started and completed are already 100%. They weren't from beginning inventory. They're all finished. There's no conversion I need to do for those. So now my equivalent units completed and transferred out isn't the 102,000 like it would have been under weighted average. It's 87,600. My equivalent units in ending work in process inventory works the same as it did in weighted average. I take the physical units of 30,000, multiply it times the percentage of completion that's indicated, and here it tells us it's 80%, and I get 24,000 equivalent units in ending work in process inventory. So when I add that to my equivalent units completed and transferred out of 87,600, I get total equivalent units accounted for of 111,600. Similar process for conversion, but again, of course, the percentage of completion for my ending inventory is different, and that's why we have to isolate that into a separate column. So bear with me. Step 2 is going to go a bit quicker. Step 2 is just the cost that we need to account for, and that's no different than what we did for a weighted average. I just go up here and indicate what my direct material dollar amount was in beginning inventory, and that was $304,920. And also we need to account for any direct material cost added in during the period. And again, I'm just going up here and indicating that that was $2,343,600. Adding that to my beginning inventory amount, I get total cost to account for of $2,648,520. Somehow I need to allocate that amongst units transferred out and also ending inventory. Again, this step is no different than weighted average. My next step of calculating cost per equivalent unit is different under FIFO, again, because I'm layering things and separating things out. Instead of under weighted average, we went up and listed the whole entire cost that we needed to account for and divided that by equivalent units. But we're just going to isolate for FIFO the cost incurred during the period, the additional cost added in. We're separating that out. So we're just listing $2,343,600. Again, cost added in during the period. Our equivalent units was already calculated up above in our step here as 111,600. And again, it isolated and separated out work done during the current period. So I can pull that amount down. So our cost per equivalent unit is our cost incurred during the period of $2,343,600 divided by our equivalent units for direct material of 111,600. Okay, $21. So that's a different cost per equivalent unit, and we would have expected that because of our layering here. So now, final step. We are almost in the home stretch, I promise, is to go ahead and assign this. And again, this you may look at this and go, this looks really scary. It is more detailed than our weighted average because of the layering. Now, the first step is easy. I'm just going to say of the cost transferred out, again, we make the assumption that our units transferred out first come from that beginning inventory. I'm just going to go back up and pull what was that cost in beginning inventory. What was that cost in beginning inventory? It was $304,920. That's going to be part of the cost transferred out. Then I want to look at taking the equivalent units and beginning inventory. Go back up here. Equivalent units in beginning inventory. Remember, that was the equivalent of what we needed to finish times my cost per equivalent unit of $21 here. And that gives me current cost to complete beginning inventory of $705,600. So for my beginning inventory, both a combination of cost that was already there and cost to complete those beginning units that were ultimately finished, I have a total cost for beginning inventory that's transferred out of $1,010,520. Now, finally, I come to the next step and I say, okay, what about my units started and completed? So again, go up here. If you recall, we said that 54,000 units were started and completed. Multiply them times the cost per equivalent unit of $21, and it gives me a total cost of units started and completed of $1,134,000. When I add that to the beginning inventory cost that's also transferred out, I get a total cost transferred out for direct materials of $2,144,520. So a lot more steps involved to get the cost transferred out for FIFO because of the layering. The ending inventory, the process is the same. I want to make sure I go back up here and get the equivalent units in ending inventory, not the physical units. So same as we did with weighted average, and that's 24,000 equivalent units for direct materials and ending work in process inventory. Again, multiply that times the cost per equivalent unit of $21, and I get my cost assigned to ending work in process inventory of $504,000 related to direct materials. Adding that to my cost transferred out of $2,144,520. And again, no coincidence, I have accounted for my total cost of $2,648,520. Again, you would want to do conversion on your own to add that to your direct material amounts.